Electrocast.
There's a change happening in the way we live, the way we work, the way we spend our money and make our decisions. We are evolving to be more conscious in our actions in a way that serves the world and makes it a better place. Welcome to the Ethical Evolution. The Ethical Evolution podcast is brought to you by Ethical Change Agency. I'm Bindi, I'm the founder, and my mission is to help ethical entrepreneurs and holistic healers to find their voice through spiritual coaching and podcasting. I'm honoured to bring you the stories of those who create change through healing, kindness, innovation, purpose, and spirit. Understanding that to create collective change, we need to be the change. It all begins with us. Author, two-time TEDx speaker, singer, songwriter, and coach, Emma G uses the magic of music to empower, uplift, and motivate audiences worldwide. Born with a rare neurological condition called hydrocephalus, Emma G has recovered from multiple traumas, including 10 brain surgeries, by writing and singing her truth, sharing her experiences, and turning her lessons into blessings. Emma G's music and story are helping audiences overcome struggles, trauma, stress, and overwhelm to step up and into their own authentic power. In her book, My Life, My Songs, My Healing, Emma G shares her own personal story of how she has turned her trauma into tunes and struggles into songs to give her music an inspirational and authentic message. Singled out by Fox, The Washington Post, and Thrive Global, the New Zealand-born singer-songwriter has expanded her mission of bringing light to the world one song at a time. As an award-winning influencer, empowering youth and adults equally as a teacher, lecturer, and, of course, an award-winning musician, Emma G has created the perfect potion for potent and impactful change. Welcome, Emma, to the Ethical Evolution.
Thank you so much. I'm I'm honored to be here. This is my first podcast in a while with somebody from down under. So thank you for reminding me of home.
Well, yeah, you're joining us from almost Washington, D.C., a long way from your little pond over this side of the world. So thank you.
Washington, D.C., Raglan, New Zealand, same thing.
Yeah, no. But yes, thank you so much for joining us. Now, Emma, for those people who don't know who you are and what you do, can you go ahead and tell us?
Absolutely. So, hello, g'day, wherever you are in the world. My name is Emma G. I am a singer-songwriter based in Washington, D.C. However, in the wake of the pandemic especially, I've always realized that music is more than just music for me. It's a methodology and a means to communicate and heal. So I established Yes Youth Coaching, which is youth empowerment through songwriting coaching, back in 2019. And my whole mission is to save the world one song at a time through my music, through helping young people write their music, step into the power of their voices, and help companies even to redesign and redefine company culture through the creative power. There's no other way to say it, of songwriting and music. And so that's been my whole mission. And I've also been lucky enough in as a consequence of this mission, I've been now done 2 TEDx talks, and I've authored 2 books, and I run a podcast TV show, and it's a whole weird creativepreneur thing that I've got going on, and I love it because at the end of the day, it's all about helping people.
Now, you sound a lot like me, Emma, in that you don't do things by halves. You're all over the place and got your finger in many pies.
All of the pies. All of the pies.
but take us back. I mean, you've had a bit of a rough trot as well, health-wise. Take us through your story there and how you got through that.
Absolutely. So it's always a weird question, like, take me back to when it all began. I'm like, I don't know, because I I was 4 months when I was diagnosed with hydrocephalus. And I don't know anybody whose brain is high functioning that remembers being 4 months old, let alone somebody who's had brain surgery at the age of 4 months old. But nonetheless, here we are. So I was diagnosed with a relatively rare neurological condition called hydrocephalus when I was 4 months old. Hydrocephalus literally translates to water on the brain. So while everyone's brains floats in water, and that water changes by between 400 to 600 milliliters a day, most people have that water enter into their skull and then drain down the spinal column. For me, however, I have a cyst the size of my fist in the center of my cranium, which means that the brain matter is kind of squashed to the sides of my skull, which then ultimately means that the exit way for the water to drain out of has no way to get out. So at the age of 4 months, when they realized, oh, snap, her head is too big for her body, they, ran some x-rays, ran some CT scans, and then inserted a tube or a shunt, which is basically a very long tube from my brain down to my peritoneal cavity to drain out the excess fluid, which is fantastic and incredibly life-saving. But it also meant that, by the age of 12, I'd had 10 brain surgeries and 24 surgeries total. And that means that as a young person trying to navigate hormonal changes, let alone social changes and normal everyday kid stuff, I was also having to deal with brain trauma, the isolation from being in hospital for weeks on end, the weirdness of being called freak and Frankenstein, falling back behind in school because of brain trauma. It was just a hard time, and I still, every now and then am directionally challenged or something goes amiss and my fiance is like, are you okay? What's going on? And we don't know if that's hydrocephalus related or not, but it's been a wild, it's been a wild ride in the sense that when you compare my experiences to another young person's experiences, they are vastly different. However, one of my blessings, is that I was diagnosed so early that I don't know any other way. But then the other blessing is, of course, given that we all get dealt these traumas, we all kind of develop these coping mechanisms and tools to help us navigate these weird traumatic events that happen in our lives. And for me, that was music.
And so, music can be a great healer, as we both know. And
absolutely.
When did you actually start writing songs?
Oh, Bindi, that's a great question. I my mother used to say, I would literally walk around my house at the age of 2 or 3 making up songs. When I was 4 or almost 4, my mother overheard me singing this song Hush Away, that she was like, what the heck is my child singing? So she wrote it down, and I actually sang it at the beginning of my first TEDx talk last year, because it's such a innocent song, but at the same time, it was very, I believe, and I think my mother said this to me as well, it was an example of a young person who'd been through crap trying to figure out how to make something positive from it. But literally pen to paper, or actually fingers to Mac 95, Microsoft 95, whatever it was. The first time I actually wrote a song pen to paper was when I was 5 years old, and about to go to school. And it was a song called School is Cool because education is important. But yeah, by the time I was 12, I'd written about 400 songs.
Whoa. Wow. So would you say, and you remind me of another guest that I've had, her name is Neda Boyne. She's from the Netherlands, and she wrote an album that was divinely guided through her based on A Course in Miracles. And
I love that because Marianne Williamson is a friend of mine. So That's amazing. Okay, carry on.
and the world gets smaller. And so she basically just sat there and it just flowed through her, and it's the most divine thing you've ever heard. And,
Yeah.
I guess for you, it sounds like the songs, you're a vehicle for the songs as well.
It's interesting. I've always been a very spiritual person. I've always had a sense of I don't know, connection to the earth, connection to source, connection to the forest, whatever you want to call it. And my journey through spirituality has now led me to a church here in the DC metropolitan area, which I'm very happy with my decision. But it was during it was a workshop, I think, that I've been to rather, that I was actually speaking at, in this, this journey of finding out who I want to be as a spiritual person, where one of the other speakers said, to pray is to talk to God, and to meditate is to listen. And I thought, that's really cool. I quite like that, but I want to take things one step further, because it is my belief, to your point, that if we are to pray and talk to God, source, spirit, the universe, whatever, and we are, to meditate is to like actually give ourselves permission to listen to the messages that come back. Songwriting for me is a manifestation of that conversation. So I totally agree with your other guest, is that like songwriting, every song I write, there'll be times, sure, when I try to force it, they're always crap. They're terrible. But when I give myself really permission to be vulnerable and honest and still, that's when these things come out of me that I'm just like, what what is that? Who that wasn't me who wrote that. What's going on? There's so many of my songs that have been evidence of that. It's been wild. It's a really, I mean, that makes songwriting sound so woo-woo. I don't mean I don't mean to sound that, but for me it's very much a case of like healing and spiritual awakening and self-love and self-reckoning and self-honesty.
And yeah, it's for you to now help youth with songwriting and also self-expression and creativity. There's a power in creativity that opens up another side of people, and if we get back to the neurological side of it, it opens up another side of our brain.
Helps them learn better.
Yeah. And just opens opportunities in other ways, and we can express ourselves and really connect with a part of ourselves we normally wouldn't in day-to-day life. What drove you to do that with kids?
So I don't work with kids. I work with teenagers. And I think the reason why there's a number of reasons. The first reason, teenagers are so often looked at as the most difficult age group to work with. And I hate that. Because I remember being a teenager, super misunderstood, brain trauma aside, puberty aside. I also, and I don't know how TMI I can get here, but, I endured a lot when I was a teenager. Abuse, homelessness, losing people to suicide, losing people to drugs, losing, like a lot. And it was actually when I was on my way to my ex-boyfriend's funeral that I kind of was like, I've still maintained my own mental health kind of at that point. But I need to do all I can. I maybe this was like a spiritual awakening for me. But I just remember driving to his funeral going, I need to do something. My music, there's something I need to do with my music to help other young people to realize that this is not the end, that there's something missing, and I didn't know what it was. I was 19. I'd been teaching vocals for 2 years, but I hadn't really gotten into youth work at that point, and I hadn't really gotten into, I definitely hadn't gotten into, the empowerment coaching. But Yeah, I think that was it. Like, and still to this day, I'm 35 in just under a month. And gosh, that's wild. I'm 35 in just under a month. I'm also getting married in just under a month, which is also
Congratulations
wild.
on all fronts.
Thank you. Best birthday present ever. But, even as a 35-year-old, I remember being a teenager. I remember feeling wildly misunderstood, wildly just struggling to feel heard and validated and seen and acknowledged and um, believed. And so when I see these teenagers who have just come over, out of a 3-year pandemic and everybody's struggling, the teenagers, I think there's just not enough resources or not enough resources that teenagers are engaged in that can really help them.
Yeah, it's interesting, that we're having this conversation right now because yesterday I was listening to a podcast that had the US Surgeon General as a guest, and they were talking about loneliness as just one of the things that they were covering. And, in particular, teenagers and also kids that have been through a pandemic. Like this is, a whole radical thing that, they've never experienced before as the rest of us were the same boat. But for them, they're in a really developmental time, like they're going into adulthood, they're trying to find their identity and who they are, and then they get locked away. And it's like they're now in this space where it's lonely, they can't connect with their friends, they can't go to school, and then on the other side of it, they've got to come out and find their new normal, And really, for teenagers, that's such a critical time, there's something, I do a lot of spiritual coaching as well, Emma, and lately one message that's been coming through a lot is like sometimes things have got to break before they heal.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you think of a broken leg, it's going to hurt before it heals, right? And it's like that whole teenage puberty time when we're trying to develop into an adult human, things are trying to heal. They're trying to stretch, they're trying to grow. And it's the same kind of concept. And we don't give teenagers that grace to do that. We hide them away, we shut them up, we push them aside. We think they're a pain in the ass, push them aside, get them out of my way, when we really should be supporting them.
Mm-hmm. And I totally agree with you. I do want to acknowledge, however, that this generation of kids are unlike any generation we've ever had.
Absolutely.
Purely because we've also raised this generation from the jump on technology.
Yes.
And on social media. And I'm not saying that to dog social media. I'm not at all. What I am saying is that it's hard if you're a generation that grew up without it, to understand the nuances of what it is like to grow up through it.
Yeah.
It's like this whole thing of AI. Now, I'm not saying that AI is fantastic. I'm not saying it's crap. What I'm saying is it's here. We need to figure out ways to use it to our benefit and to our advantage in a healthy, productive, constructive way that can help, build a stronger, more resilient next generation, as opposed to, putting our kids in front of the TV and thinking it's going to do better for them than TikTok.
I could not agree more. Yeah. And that's exactly another part of what the US general surgeon was saying was that social media has completely changed the landscape for these kids. Like it's like they are now judging themselves. They've now got this lens on their life that is like a comparison, and I'm not good enough. I'm not this, I'm not that. I don't have this, I don't have that. And it's just a whole layer that, in my generation we didn't have. And we can't understand that unless we're in it. But music can help change their whole perspective, can't it?
Well, yeah, I think the way that I view music when it comes to social media in particular, it's a couple of things. One, my generation, millennials, and Gen Z. I'm one of the older millennials, I get, but from even millennials, even just a few years older than me, a lot of us struggle with having phone conversations, let alone face-to-face communication. For Gen Z, it is so much worse. And so when you're, expecting Gen Z to have these communication, these conversations face to face, and they're not able to, that's a problem. But also, when we look at how social media, very few people of even, millennials and older have taken the time to understand algorithms and how they work. That's also another issue. So the way that I have found this has helped is a couple of things. One, songwriting and music, but specifically with songwriting, whether it's rapping or singing, helps people to tap into parts of their vocabulary and communication styles that normal face-to-face communication, essay writing, research projects doesn't even begin to come close to. I tested this out back when I was a university lecturer, where a lot of our students who are second chance learners have been incarcerated and were coming back into the education field and wanting to become better, but they were petrified of public speaking and essay writing. Do you know what they weren't petrified of? Rapping. So we got them to essentially rap their research and study the facts to put into their not autobiographical, their research raps and their biographical raps. And I tell you, Bindi, the vernacular that they were like, what? Like that doesn't even, I can't even begin to tell you how astonishing it can be. And then when you take the algorithms of social media into play, when you have these young people creating educational, empowering, self-affirming songs that represent really who they are accessing parts of their vocabulary that they might not be able to use so well in a face-to-face conversation. If they're able to then record that media, even if it's just to a backing track that they found on YouTube, and then put that up as a TikTok video, that actually tells the TikTok algorithms, hey, this person wants to know more about self-love. This person wants to know more about why, Jay-Z's, be smarter, be smarter about your life as opposed to hustling all the time. You know what I mean? There's so many ways that we can navigate these things if we take the time to understand it first and then figure out a plan of how to move with it as opposed to against it.
And this is also interesting in what you've just said there. That the previous guest I was just talking about, Netta, she also would go into prisons and work with incarcerated teens
Right.
and get them to write songs. And it was generally raps they would do. And that was their way of then connecting with the messages behind A Course in Miracles. But their whole message changed. And getting back to your theme there of communication, did you find that the message changed from one of, you hear rap songs nowadays and they're just full of rubbish and hate and stuff like that. Did they become more positive and more empowering?
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, this was in New Zealand that I was teaching at university. And so we're very impacted by the hip hop culture of the States, but it's a totally different country, as you know.
Yeah.
So it wasn't nearly as provocative, I'd say, as what, compared to Biggie Smalls or even Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
But when you give people access to freely express themselves in a way that makes them stop and think about what it is they're actually saying, that has provided some really beautiful, opportunities for them to actually show up positively for themselves. To bring that to present day with the work that I'm doing here in schools now around the DC metropolitan area, I'll often go into schools and predominantly work with the at-risk youth.
Yep.
That's code for lower socioeconomic communities, unfortunately, or those who just don't have the financial means or the reach to, have teachers who understand them and take the time to work with them. But nonetheless, a lot of the students that I work with in these schools, they come to me all like, oh, yeah, I'm gangster. Oh, yeah, I'm here to, whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. That's what the G stands for. I'm a gangster, just so y'all know. And I say to them, look, we're here to write songs, and I want you to show up honestly and truthfully and things. And I don't care if you cuss.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, wait a minute, what? And I was like, I don't care if you cuss. If you honestly feel like you are the only way that you can express yourself is to cuss about yourself, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But I tell them, I know that everybody here is big enough, smart enough, ugly enough to express themselves far more intelligently than that. So this is a challenge that you show up for yourselves and be more intelligent with your word. In saying that, if you are going to cuss, make sure it rhymes. And they were like, oh, okay. I have been doing this coaching now for going on 4 years. I have had one client cuss.
Wow. Nicely done.
And that client, the reason why they cussed, and I'm not mad about it at all, his father had just passed away from cancer. Sorry, his mother had just passed away from cancer. His brother had just been incarcerated, and his father was sick.
I totally get it.
I'm not mad.
Yeah. Wow.
And he rhymed it, of course. So,
That's awesome. That's amazing. And it must be so rewarding for you to see them connect with that creative side and just nail something, like whether it be a rhyme or whatever it be. Can you think of a highlight for you in the coaching that you've done that's really been an aha moment for you where you've just gone, yeah, that's it?
Oh, gosh. I can literally an hour before this conversation.
Really?
Yeah. So I have a client. She's actually 23. She's not a teenager, but she started as a vocal client of mine, and we've transitioned into vocals and songwriting together. She has been through some pretty difficult circumstances the past few months. She was diagnosed with a really scary thing. Nearly died a couple of months back. Had to have emergency surgery. She's been through the thick of it. And she was not feeling like she could go on. She was living in New York, needed to come back to Maryland. There's a whole bunch of things were kind of turned upside down for her. And tonight, after, I sort of coaxed her out of the shadows a little bit. And, well, okay, you can stand now, so that's good. Let's get back into singing, okay? And, oh, you've been doing some writing, fantastic. Tonight, we recorded her debut single with my producer in Baltimore. And she called me on the way home crying, again, just an hour ago, saying, I don't know I can't even begin to explain how I'm feeling right now, when a couple of months back, everything was over. I was just like, I'm in tears thinking about it. and that's what it's about. It's about like songwriting, music. This it's not just for shits and giggles. It's to help people remember who they are. It's to help people feel empowered to remember things that they knew all along, but are so scared to show up for, and so scared to show people. And it's it's beautiful. It's beautiful to be part of this, that I get to be part of this process where people feel safe enough to be seen and feel safe enough to see themselves and then feel powerful as they do so. That's incredible to me.
And I felt that all the way here, Emma. I was on the edge of tears with you right there. And I was like, oh, that one got me in the feels.
You're welcome. I'm all about punching people in the feelings. I'm not aggressive, but when it comes to emotions, I gotcha.
Now, you've just done another TEDx talk. You've done 2 now, which are incredible.
Thank you.
And so engaging. And you rock up with your guitar and you sing along and you tell your message. And that's what I love about you is you just integrate the whole thing and you take the message with you. If you can share just a snippet with us of one of the songs that you shared in one of the TEDx talks.
One of the things about everything I do really kind of gets summarized by a Native American tale that I learned about, 2021, I think it was. Because I, like most people, dove deep into my own mental and spiritual health, especially, as I'm balancing the coaching stuff. You need to make sure that your own cup is full so that you can then fill others. But one thing that I stumbled across one day was the story of the wolf, or the wolf that you feed. And the tale is grandfather and his grandson are talking about these 2 wolves that live inside of us at all times. And the grandfather was telling the grandson about, how one wolf is the wolf of anger and bitterness and everything negative, hate and fear and just horrible, horrible things. And then we've got the other wolf of the wolf of love and positivity and hope and power and all the good things that we want to hold on to, right? But these wolves are constantly fighting with each other. Okay, the grandson looks at his grandfather and says, well, which wolf wins the fight if they're always fighting? And the grandfather replies and says, the wolf you feed. And that's what this song is about.
Tearing down the habit, forgetting who I
Amazing. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. No, of course. It's I know it's not the most orthodox of approaches when it comes to the music industry. I think when people think of musicians, they think of Britney and Iron Maiden and, you know, Taylor Swift. Um, and that's great. I mean, they all have their stories and their messages and things, but I really, am very passionate about making sure that my music is the kind of music that makes an impact and helps people to feel themselves again.
Which is not something that we hear in everyday pop music nowadays, is it? Like,
I'm just saying.
Some of the messages, and this is, I think, the central theme for us today, Emma, is, what is our message? Like, if you were to turn to someone today and go, if you have one message to give to the world, which, it's very close to my final question I'm going to give you, what would that message be? Like, I'm sure there's many people who would be like, I don't know.
I love that question, though. It's a great question. I should ask people that. In DC, we go to these like corporate networking events all the time, and there's always that person that's like, "So, what do you do?" Like, and you can just tell that not one person, everybody's like that, and it's always like, "What do you do? How can I use that to my advantage?" I kind of refute that question. I'm like, I don't want to know what you do. I want to know what you did, what you wanted to be when you were 5 years old. And is what you're doing now making you happy? That's always my question. And one of my two questions that I ask people. But I think from now on, I'm going to start asking people, if you had one message for the world, what would that message be? That is a great question, Bindi.
You're welcome. Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Share that goodness around. And
yes,
I feel you too, because last week I was at a networking thing down the Gold Coast, and you're meeting people you've never met before, and you're like, oh, here we go. What do you do? Where are you from? And it's like, nah. Like, I can't do that small talk anymore. I kind of want to know what lights you up. I kind of want to know what you're here to do, what you're here to change. Yeah. And
exactly.
And that's my core theme of everything that I do. So, yeah, when I then get into a conversation with someone who I can see the lights are on, I'm like, oof, yep, you're my person.
Exactly.
And I think that's why you're here, Emma. Now, you've done some writing as well. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that.
So I've got 2 books currently. The first one is very me-centric. It's called My Life, My Songs, My Healing, turning struggles into song. And it's very much about my music and how every song that I've ever written has served, well, not ever released, up until the point of the writing of the book, has served me in some way, shape, or form. The second book is called Reconnect with Your Teenager, A Parent's Guide to Helping Your Stressed or Anxious Kid Through the Art of Songwriting. And it's very much like a mother's handbook to helping their creative daughter to express themselves with them, so that, we can get that mother-daughter connection back, which I know so many parents struggle with. But I also know that a lot of young people don't want to talk to their parents about what's really going on for them. So, that's one of the reasons why I do the coaching. It's just to help, be a bridge for that communication. But then, after my last TEDx presentation, from Pain to Playlist, Turning Struggles into Song, I decided I wanted to combine the messages of both of my books. So the book is called the same thing, From Pain to Playlist, Turning Struggles into Song. And it's literally a document of, I think it's going to be 30 chapters, 30 songs of songs that I've written, but not just about me. This is about like the messages I've learned and recorded in the songs that I've written. Songs like The Wolf I Feed, about recognizing that we are all in control. We're only ever one decision away from the rest of our lives, right? Songs like Living Proof, which I wrote for Marianne Williamson, about the recognizing that we've come so far already. We need to carry on because we're strong enough to keep going. We are living proof that love does win. So let's keep winning. So on and so forth. So it's a work in progress. I'm finishing up the first draft at the moment, but my first two books will give you a kind of indication on what it is I do and how you can take those tools upon yourself and utilize that for your own creative journeys.
As you were talking then, I had a message come through that was, and I just looked at the clock at the same time and it was 11:11 here when you said it. There's no coincidence here. Don't let me lose it now, Spirit. That you're an emotions dealer. That's what you are. You're an emotions dealer through the messages that you share and the music that you create and the song that you ultimately deliver. You're an emotions dealer because
I like that.
What you're actually delivering in your message is quite empowering. It's quite uplifting and it has meaning and it can move people.
Thank you. I was for a long time used the term hug dealer to describe myself because I am the giver of hugs, but I like emotions dealer. I think that's a really beautiful way to put it.
Probably a bit more of a global concept too, to do with it what you will, Now, Emma, if people are as jazzed as I am about you and they want to get in touch, where can they go?
Of course. Literally Google Emma G. You will see my face, which feels weird to say, but my SEO people are really good at what they do. But if you want to find me, emmagmusic.com or Emma G Music on Twitter, on Instagram, and on TikTok, or Emma G Speaks on Facebook.
Love it. Now, I got that last big question for you. What's the change you'd like to see in the world and how can we bring it to life?
The change I want to see in the world is for people to, how do I put this? I think the biggest change I would like to see in the world is to have everybody understand themselves better and understand how to communicate themselves better and understand how to communicate themselves better so that we can live in a world where there is more healthy dialogues around even difficult topics. Obviously it's easy to say things like I want a world that's free of fear, but fear is important. We need to have fear. Having a world without bigotry comes back to lack of communication and lack of understanding and lack of ways to listen and ways to be heard. So I think, if we can have a world where everybody has the tools and means to both communicate and hear one another more effectively, I think that'd be a beautiful place to live.
And that change begins with us. So really, if we can just start the conversation in a kind and connecting way, we're going to make that world even smaller and closer.
Absolutely.
Emma G, you're incredible. Thank you so much for being a part of the Ethical Evolution.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Ethical Evolution podcast. If you're ready to be the change and would love to work with me on finding your voice through spiritual coaching or creating your own podcast with impact, visit ethicalchangeagency.com.
Are you a fan of classic cinema or a young person who wants to discover the best films of all time? Do these legendary movies still hold up?
On the Generation Film podcast, two guys who grew up when movies dominated the culture share a great film with a panel of young movie lovers and see how it plays for today's generation.
We discuss changes in storytelling styles, representation,
The making of each film, its initial reception, and how its meaning has changed over the years.
Join us as we explore cinema classics across generations on Generation Film.
Electricast. Hey there, fabulous souls. I'm Stephanie Baklaan.
And I'm Eden Alpert.
And we're the hosts of the brand new podcast, Unapologetically Fab.
Get ready to join us on an amazing and real journey as we dive into life after 40 and own it.
We're all about changing the narrative, leaning into who you are, and living a life by your own design.
Join us as we embrace life unapologetically and redefine success.
This is Unapologetically Fab,
An Electricast production.
See you there.
Electricast. Electricast.